Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiance, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might support human life. It was quiet work, but Jake enjoyed the peace of exploration. "Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors," said Amy Carter from the communications station. Her voice carried a note of excitement that made Jake turn around. Amy was usually calm, so when she got excited about something, it was worth paying attention to. "What kind of something?" Jake asked, walking over to look at her screen. "Multiple contacts, sir. Big ones, at least 20 ships, maybe more. They're moving in formation about 2 light hours ahead of us." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Defiance was supposed to be exploring empty space. No human ships should be out here, and as far as Earth knew, there were no other intelligent species in this region of the galaxy. "Lisa, how are our engines?" Jake called to Chief Engineer Lisa Park, who was monitoring the ship's systems from her station. "Running smooth, Captain. We can jump to faster than light speed any time you want," Lisa replied. Her hands were already moving over her controls, getting the ship ready for whatever might come next. Jake nodded and turned to Ryan Hayes at the tactical station. "Ryan, what can you tell me about those ships?" Ryan studied his displays for a moment. "They're big, Captain. Much bigger than anything we've built. The smallest one looks to be about twice the size of the Defiance, and some of them are massive. I'm reading energy signatures I've never seen before." Jake made his decision. "Amy, try to establish communication. Let them know we're here peacefully." "Already trying, sir." "Broadcasting on all frequencies," Amy said, her fingers dancing across her controls. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Jake could feel the tension building as they waited for a response. The Defiance was a good ship with a crew of 200, but if those contacts were hostile, they might be in serious trouble. "Captain, I'm getting a response," Amy said suddenly. "They're demanding we identify ourselves and state our business in what they call Imperial space?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Imperial space? Put them on the main screen?" The view of stars disappeared, replaced by the image of a creature that definitely wasn't human. It had 4 arms, scaly blue skin, and eyes that glowed with an inner light. When it spoke, its voice was harsh and commanding. "Unknown vessel, you have entered territory controlled by the Galactic Empire. I am Admiral Zexstar of the Imperial Navy. You will identify your species and surrender your ship for inspection immediately." Jake stepped forward. "Admiral, I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel HSS Defiance. We're on a peaceful mission to explore and map this region of space. We didn't know this area was claimed by anyone." The alien's 4 eyes narrowed. "Humans, we have no record of your species. You will surrender your vessel immediately and submit to Imperial authority. Any resistance will be met with force." Jake felt his jaw tighten. He'd hoped for a peaceful first contact, but this Admiral Zexstar seemed more interested in giving orders than talking. "Admiral, we're not looking for trouble. We're just explorers. Maybe we can work something out." "There is nothing to work out, human. You have 3 minutes to surrender, or my fleet will disable your ship and take it by force." The screen went dark, leaving Jake staring at the stars again. He turned to face his crew, seeing the worry in their faces. Dr. Helen Wright, the ship's science officer, spoke up from her station. "Captain, our sensors are picking up more activity from their fleet. They're moving into attack positions." Jake nodded grimly. He'd hoped it wouldn't come to this, but it looked like humanity's first contact with alien life was going to be a fight. "Lisa, how are our shields?" "Fully charged and ready, Captain. Our defensive systems are operating at peak efficiency." "Ryan, weapons status?" "All systems ready, sir. Railguns loaded and targeted. Point defense systems active." Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people, scientists, and explorers who'd signed up to discover new worlds, not fight battles. But they were also humans, and humans didn't back down from a fight when they had to protect themselves. "Amy, send a final message to the Imperial fleet. Tell them we don't want to fight, but we won't surrender our ship. We're prepared to defend ourselves. Amy's hands flew over her controls. Message sent, Captain. They didn't have to wait long for a response. The space around the Defiance suddenly lit up with energy beams and projectiles as the Imperial fleet opened fire. Jake watched in amazement as dozens of alien weapons struck their shields. Lisa, damage report. No damage, Captain. Their weapons aren't even making our shields flicker. Whatever they're using, it's not getting through our defensive systems. Jake blinked in surprise. The Imperial fleet had seemed so intimidating, but their weapons were barely scratching the Defiance's shields. He turned to Dr. Wright. Helen, what's your analysis? Their weapons appear to be energy-based, Captain. Plasma beams and particle weapons. Our shields were designed to handle kinetic impacts and energy attacks from human weapons. It looks like their technology might be less advanced than ours. On the main screen, Jake could see the Imperial ships continuing their attack, but their weapons were having no effect. He almost felt sorry for them. They'd probably never encountered anything that could shrug off their attacks so easily. Sir, I'm picking up communications from the Imperial fleet, Amy reported. They're calling for reinforcements and requesting orders on how to proceed. They seem confused about why their weapons aren't working. Jake made his decision. Ryan, target their lead ship. One shot across their bow. Let's see if we can get their attention without actually hurting anyone. Targeting now, Captain. Firing one railgun round. The Defiance's main gun fired, sending a solid projectile at incredible speed toward the Imperial fleet. The round missed the lead ship by a few hundred meters, but the alien sensors would have tracked it easily. Captain, their communications are going crazy, Amy said. They're calling our weapon impossible and demanding to know how we penetrated their shields, Jake frowned. We didn't penetrate their shields, that was a warning shot. I know, sir. But they're acting like we just did something that shouldn't be possible. On the tactical display, Jake watched the Imperial ships beginning to spread out, taking defensive positions. Whatever they'd expected from humanity, it wasn't this. Their confident demands had turned into confused panic. Captain, the Imperial. Admiral is requesting communication again, Amy announced. Put him through. Admiral Zexstar's image appeared on the screen again, but this time he looked shaken. Human vessel, how did you penetrate our defensive barriers? What manner of weapon was that? Jake decided to be honest. Admiral, that was just a warning shot. We fired past your ship, not at it. Our weapon didn't touch your shields. The aliens? Four eyes went wide. Impossible. Our sensors detected your projectile. It should have been stopped by our barriers, but it passed through as if they weren't there. Admiral, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we should talk about this calmly. But Admiral Zexstar was already turning away, shouting orders to his crew. Fall back to minimum safe distance. Alert Imperial Command that we have encountered a species with technology that bypasses our shields. Request immediate reinforcement. The screen went dark again, leaving Jake and his crew staring at each other in confusion. Somehow their peaceful exploration mission had turned into a standoff with an alien empire, and nobody seemed to understand what was happening. Captain, Dr. Wright said quietly, I think we may have just announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in a very dramatic way. Jake nodded, watching the Imperial ships retreating to a safer distance. Lisa, prepare for faster-than-light travel. We need to get word back to Earth about what's happened here. Already on it, Captain. We can jump anytime you're ready. As Jake gave the order to retreat, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Humanity had made contact with a galactic empire, and somehow the aliens seemed more afraid of humans than humans were of them. That was either very good news or very bad news, and Jake wasn't sure which. Captain Jake Morrison watched the Imperial fleet hold their position at what they considered a safe distance. The alien ships had stopped firing, but their formation showed they were still ready for battle. Jake could see them on the tactical display, 23 vessels arranged in a defensive pattern that probably looked very impressive to anyone who had never seen human military doctrine. Captain, I'm picking up a lot of chatter from their fleet, Amy Carter reported from her communications station. They're calling us the impossible ship and requesting guidance from their superiors. Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on the tactical situation. The Imperial fleet might have backed off, but they hadn't left. That meant they were probably waiting for reinforcements or new orders. Either way, it spelled trouble for the Defiance. Ryan, what's your read on their weapons? Jake asked his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Ben Torres, who had taken over the weapons station during the alert, looked up from his displays. Their energy weapons are powerful, Captain, but they're designed to work against shields that operate like theirs. Our defensive systems use completely different principles. It's like they're trying to unlock a door with the wrong key. Dr. Helen Wright turned from her science station. Captain, I've been analyzing their technology during the standoff. Their shields appear to be based on deflecting energy attacks by creating opposing energy fields. It's actually quite elegant, but it has a major weakness. What kind of weakness? Jake asked. They can't stop solid objects moving at high velocity. Their shields are designed to deflect energy, not absorb kinetic impact. That's why our railgun round went right through their defensive barrier like it wasn't there. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying their shields can't stop our weapons at all? That's exactly what I'm saying, Captain. And from what I can tell, they don't understand why. Before Jake could respond, the main display lit up with new contacts. More Imperial ships were dropping out of faster than light travel, joining the fleet that was already watching the Defiance. Jake counted them as they appeared, 12, 15, 20 new vessels. Captain, the Imperial fleet just got a lot bigger, Ryan reported. I'm reading 43 ships now, and more are arriving. Amy's voice was tense. Sir, I'm intercepting their communications. The new arrivals are asking about the demon ship and wanting to know how we destroyed their shields. We didn't destroy their shields, Jake said with frustration. Why do they keep saying that? Dr. Wright looked up from her analysis. Captain, I think I understand the problem. Their sensors are telling them that our railgun round passed through their shields, but their technology says that's impossible. Since they can't explain how we did it, they're assuming we have some kind of superweapon. Jake was about to reply when the tactical display showed the Imperial fleet moving again. This time, they weren't backing away. They were spreading out in what looked like a classic attack formation. Captain, the Imperial Admiral is hailing us again, Amy announced. Put him through. Admiral Zextar's image appeared on the screen, and Jake could see that the alien looked angry and determined. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately or face the combined might of the Imperial Navy. This is your final warning. Jake stepped forward. Admiral, I keep trying to tell you that we don't want to fight. We're explorers, not warriors. But we won't surrender our ship. Then you will be destroyed? Admiral Zextar snarled. No single vessel can stand against the might of the Empire. You will learn the price of defying Imperial authority. The screen went dark and Jake turned to his crew. All hands, prepare for battle. Ryan, target their weapon systems only. I want to disable them, not destroy them. Understood, Captain. Targeting their weapon emitters. The Imperial fleet opened fire all at once, filling space with energy beams and projectiles. The Defiance's shields absorbed the massive attack without even a flicker, just like before. Jake watched his shield display, waiting for some sign that the alien weapons were having an effect. Lisa, damage report, he called to his chief engineer. No damage, Captain. Their weapons still aren't getting through our shields. We're at full defensive strength? Jake nodded and turned to Ben Torres. Ben, return fire. Disable their lead ships. The Defiance's railguns fired, sending solid projectiles at incredible speed toward the Imperial fleet. The first round struck 3 of the largest enemy vessels, punching through their shields and into their weapon systems. Explosions bloomed along the hulls of the alien ships as their weapons were destroyed. Direct hits, Captain, Ben reported. Their weapons are offline, but their ships are still intact. On the tactical display, Jake could see the Imperial fleet's formation beginning to break apart. Ships that had been firing moments before were now drifting helplessly, their weapons destroyed by human railgun rounds that had passed through their shields as if they weren't there. "Captain, their communications are going crazy," Amy said. "They're calling our weapons impossible and against the laws of physics. Some of their ships are requesting permission to retreat." Jake felt a mix of satisfaction and concern. The Defiance was winning the battle easily, but that might make things worse in the long run. If the Empire thought humans had impossible weapons, they might decide that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. "Ben, continue targeting their weapon systems. I want them disabled, not destroyed." "Aye, Captain." Targeting the next group of vessels. The rail guns fired again, and more Imperial ships found their weapons destroyed by projectiles that their shields couldn't stop. Jake watched as the alien fleet's formation completely fell apart. Ships scattering in all directions as their commanders tried to understand what was happening. Chief Engineer Lisa Park looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations from their ships. They're trying to overload their shields, probably hoping to stop our weapons. Will it work?" Jake asked. Dr. Wright shook her head. "No, Captain. Overloading their shields will just make them brighter. It won't change the fact that they can't stop kinetic weapons." Jake watched as several Imperial ships pushed their shields to maximum power, creating brilliant energy fields around their hulls. It was an impressive display, but when the Defiance's next salvo hit them, the railgun rounds passed through the overloaded shields just as easily as before. "Captain, I'm getting a priority message from the Imperial fleet," Amy announced. "Admiral Zextar wants to speak with you. Put him through." When the alien admiral appeared on the screen, Jake could see that he looked shaken. His four eyes were wide with what looked like fear, and his scaled skin had turned a darker shade of blue. "Human Captain, I demand to know what manner of weapons you possess. Our shields should stop any projectile, yet your weapons pass through, as if our defenses don't exist." Jake decided to try a different approach. "Admiral, our weapons aren't special. They're just pieces of metal moving very fast. Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not solid objects." Admiral Zextar's eyes went even wider. "Impossible. Kinetic weapons are primitive. No advanced civilization uses such crude technology." "Well, we do," Jake said simply. "And apparently they work pretty well against your shields." The alien admiral was quiet for a long moment, staring at Jake with what looked like disbelief. "You mean to tell me that you have defeated the Imperial Navy with primitive projectile weapons?" "I wouldn't say defeated," Jake replied. "We've just disabled your weapons. Your ships are still intact and your crews are safe. But how?" Admiral Zextar demanded. "How do primitive weapons penetrate our advanced defenses?" Dr. Wright spoke up from her station. "Captain, maybe I should explain the physics to him." Jake nodded. "Go ahead, Helen." Dr. Wright stepped forward. "Admiral, your shields work by creating energy fields that deflect or absorb energy weapons. But kinetic weapons don't carry energy in the same way. They carry momentum, mass times velocity. Your shields can't deflect momentum because they're not designed to handle solid objects moving at high speed." Admiral Zextar stared at her for a long moment. "You mean your entire defensive strategy is based on primitive physics?" "Basic physics," Dr. Wright corrected. "Force equals mass times acceleration. The faster we throw something, the harder it hits." The alien admiral's expression changed from confusion to something that looked like horror. "If such simple weapons can defeat our shields, then our entire military doctrine is flawed." Jake felt a moment of sympathy for the alien commander. The Empire had probably built their entire civilization around the idea that they had the best weapons and defenses in the galaxy. Discovering that humans could defeat them with what they considered primitive technology must be devastating. "Admiral," Jake said gently, "maybe we should discuss this calmly. We don't want to be your enemies." But Admiral Zextar was already turning away, shouting orders to his surviving ships. "All vessels, retreat to minimum safe distance. Send priority message to Imperial Command. Human weapons operate on principles that bypass our defensive systems. Recommend immediate deployment of the Grand Fleet. The screen went dark and Jake watched as the Imperial ships began to withdraw. They didn't jump to faster than light speed, but they moved far enough away that their weapons couldn't reach the Defiance. Supreme Admiral Korath stood in the command center of the Imperial capital, staring at the battle recordings that had just arrived from the Outer Rim. The massive alien had ruled the Empire's military for over 2 centuries, and in all that time, he had never seen anything like what was displayed on the screens before him. "Play it again," he commanded. His voice echoing through the chamber, the technician at the control station nodded nervously. "Yes, Supreme Admiral." Beginning playback of the engagement between Admiral Zextar-S fleet and the human vessel. Korath watched as the recording showed the human ship absorbing the full firepower of an Imperial fleet without taking any damage. Then came the part that made his blood run cold, the human weapons cutting through Imperial shields like they were made of paper. "Stop," Korath ordered. "Analyze that weapon impact. Tell me how they penetrated our shields." The technician worked frantically at his controls. "Supreme Admiral, our analysis shows that the human weapons are solid projectiles moving at extremely high velocity. They appear to pass through our shields without any interaction at all." Korath felt a chill run through his massive frame. You telling me that our shields cannot stop simple projectile weapons?" "That appears to be correct, Supreme Admiral. Our defensive systems are designed to deflect or absorb energy attacks. They have no mechanism for stopping solid objects." The Supreme Admiral turned to face the other officers in the command center. These were the best military minds in the Empire, veterans of countless campaigns against rebellious worlds. Now they all looked as shaken as he felt. "How is this possible?" Korath demanded. "We have ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Our technology is supreme. How can a primitive species defeat our fleets with simple projectiles?" General Vexhai, the Empire's chief military strategist, stepped forward. "Supreme Admiral, perhaps their weapons are not as primitive as they appear. They may have developed some form of advanced kinetic technology that we do not understand." Korath shook his head. "Look at the recordings again. Those are simple metal projectiles. Nothing more. The problem is not with their weapons. The problem is with our defenses." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If the Empire's shields could not stop basic kinetic weapons, then their entire military doctrine was built on a foundation of weakness. "Supreme Admiral," another officer spoke up, "should we consider that this was a fluke? Perhaps their weapons have some special property that we cannot detect." "No," Korath replied firmly. "Send orders to all fleet commanders. I want immediate testing of our shields against kinetic weapons. Use asteroid debris, metal projectiles, anything solid moving at high speed. I want to know exactly how vulnerable we are." As the officers hurried to carry out his orders, Korath continued to study the battle recordings. The human ship had not just defeated the Imperial fleet, it had made them look foolish. Worse, it had done so with technology that the Empire considered obsolete. Meanwhile, light years away, Commander Alex Stone crouched behind a sensor array on the human stealth ship HSS Shadow. The ship was completely invisible to Imperial sensors, using technology that bent light and energy around the vessel. Alex and his team had been watching Imperial military bases for weeks, gathering intelligence on how the Empire was responding to the encounter with the Defiance. "Commander, you need to see this," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the ship's intelligence officer. She was monitoring Imperial communications from her position near the ship's main sensor array. Alex moved quietly to her position. "What have you got?" "The Empire is in full panic mode," Sarah reported. "They're pulling ships from all over the galaxy and concentrating them in 3 major fleet bases. From what I can tell, they're preparing for a war unlike anything they've fought before." Alex studied the data on Sarah's screen. The numbers were staggering, thousands of ships being moved, entire sectors being stripped of their defenses. "They're scared. More than scared, Commander. Listen to this." Sarah activated a recording of Imperial communications. Even through the translation software, Alex could hear the fear in the alien voices. All units, priority directive from Imperial Command. The humans possess weapons that render our shields useless. Repeat, human weapons bypass our defensive systems completely. All ships are to maintain maximum distance from any human contacts. Alex felt a chill. They think we're some kind of super weapon. It gets worse, Sarah continued. They're calling us the species that breaks physics and demons from the void. Some of their commanders are requesting permission to evacuate their sectors rather than face human ships. Alex shook his head in amazement. The HSS Defiance was just an exploration vessel, not even a proper warship. If the Empire was this terrified of a science ship, what would they do when they encountered actual human military vessels? Commander, came a voice from behind them, Dr. Kevin Walsh. The mission's xenobiologist approached with a datapad in his hand. I've been analyzing the Imperial technology we captured during our reconnaissance missions. I think I understand why they're so afraid. Alex turned to face the scientist. Explain. Their entire civilization is built on technological stagnation, Dr. Walsh said, consulting his notes. For the past 3,000 years, they've had no real opposition. Their technology has barely advanced because they've never needed to improve it. They've been using the same basic designs for centuries. So? Alex asked. So they think everyone else in the galaxy works the same way. They assume that if a species has faster than light travel, they must also have energy weapons and energy? Shields. The idea that someone might still use kinetic weapons is completely foreign to them. Sarah looked up from her communications station. That explains why they keep calling our weapons impossible. They literally cannot understand how we're doing what we're doing, Dr. Walsh nodded. Exactly. To them, using kinetic weapons is like using stone tools. They can't comprehend that. We might have made kinetic weapons so advanced that they're superior to their energy systems. Alex thought about this for a moment. Human technology had been shaped by centuries of warfare on Earth. Every weapon system had been tested against every defensive system, leading to constant innovation and improvement. The Empire, by contrast, had been using the same technology for millennia without any real challenges. Commander, I'm picking up something new, Sarah said urgently. The Empire is broadcasting on all frequencies. It sounds like some kind of announcement, Alex nodded. Put it through. The recording began with what sounded like Imperial military music, followed by an official announcement. The translation software worked to convert the alien language into English. Citizens of the Empire, a new threat has emerged from the Outer Rim. A species calling themselves humans has demonstrated weapons that can defeat our defenses. All loyal citizens are called upon to support the military effort to contain this threat. The Empire's safety depends on swift action against these dangerous aliens. Alex felt his stomach drop. They're declaring war on humanity. Gets worse, Sarah said. Grimly, they're also sending messages to all their client species, demanding additional ships and troops. They're calling it a holy war of extermination. Dr. Walsh looked pale. Commander, we need to get this information back to Earth immediately. If the Empire is mobilizing their entire military against us, Earth needs to know. Alex nodded and activated his communicator. Bridge, this is Commander Stone. Prepare for immediate departure. We need to get back to Earth with critical intelligence. As the HSS Shadow prepared to jump to faster than light speed, Alex continued to monitor Imperial communications. The fear in the alien voices was unmistakable, but it was fear mixed with determination. The Empire might be terrified of human weapons, but they were not going to back down. Commander, Sarah said quietly, I'm picking up communication from the Imperial capital. They're talking about something called the Grand Armada, apparently a fleet that hasn't been used since the Empire's initial conquest of the galaxy. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. How big is this Grand Armada? From what I can tell, it's every major warship the Empire has. We're talking about thousands of vessels, maybe tens of thousands. Double quotes. Dr. Walsh shook his head. The Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They must have an enormous military force. That's what worries me, Alex replied. The Defiance defeated one Imperial fleet easily, but what happens when they send everything they have? As the shadow jumped to faster than light speed, racing back toward Earth with news of the Empire's preparations, Alex couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. Humanity had been exploring space peacefully, looking for new worlds and new life. Instead, they had stumbled into a conflict with a galactic empire that saw them as an existential threat. "Commander," Sarah said, "I'm still monitoring Imperial communications. They're not just preparing for war, they're preparing for the complete destruction of humanity. They think we're too dangerous to be allowed to exist." Alex nodded grimly. "Then we better make sure Earth is ready for what's coming." Behind them, the Empire continued its massive military mobilization. Fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy were being recalled to form the largest armada in Imperial history. Emperor Valdris the Eternal sat on his golden throne in the center of the Imperial Council chamber, watching as representatives from hundreds of worlds filed into the massive hall. The Emperor had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, and this was only the third time he had called a full council meeting. The last time had been 800 years ago. When the rebellion of the Outer Worlds had threatened Imperial stability, the council chamber was enormous. Built to hold representatives from every species in the Empire, aliens of all shapes and sizes took their places in the tiered seating that surrounded the Emperor's throne. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of limbs. Some breathed oxygen, others required special breathing apparatus, but all of them shared one thing: they looked afraid. "Citizens of the Empire," the Emperor began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber, "we face a threat unlike any in our 3,000-year history. A species has emerged from the outer rim that possesses weapons capable of defeating our defenses." A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Many of them had already heard rumors about the human encounter, but hearing it confirmed by the Emperor himself made it real. Supreme Admiral Korath stepped forward from his position near the throne. "Your Imperial Majesty, honored representatives, I must report that our analysis of the human weapon systems shows a fundamental flaw in our defensive strategy." The murmur grew louder. Admiral Vexra of the Zephyrian Navy rose from her seat. "Supreme Admiral, how is it possible that our shields, which have protected the Empire for millennia, can be defeated by a single unknown species?" Korath activated a holographic display that showed the battle between the Defiance and Admiral Zexstar's fleet. The humans use kinetic weapons, solid projectiles moving at extreme velocity. "Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, not physical objects." Representative Gorth of the mining world spoke up, "But kinetic weapons are primitive technology. Why would an advanced species use such crude methods?" "That is exactly the problem," Korath replied. "We assumed that any species capable of faster than light travel would also use energy weapons. We were wrong." The Emperor raised his hand for silence. "The question before us is not how this happened, but what we do about it." "General Vexhai, report on our military preparations." General Vexhai, the Empire's chief strategist, stepped forward. "Your Imperial Majesty, we have recalled all major fleets to form the Grand Armada. 10,000 ships are being assembled in the Proxima sector. It will be the largest military force in Imperial history." Representative Zalthek of the warrior caste stood up. 10,000 ships to fight one human vessel? Is this not excessive? The human ship that defeated Admiral Zexstar's fleet was not a warship, Korath explained. It was an exploration vessel. Our intelligence suggests that actual human military ships may be far more dangerous. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. If a human science ship could defeat an Imperial fleet, what could their warships do? Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Patricia Cole stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, watching as the human fleet assembled in the Alpha Centauri system. The Retribution was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, built with everything Earth had learned about space combat in the decades since humans first reached the stars. Admiral, the last of our ships just arrived, reported Captain Nathan Brooks from the communications station. We now have 47 vessels ready for deployment. Admiral Cole nodded, studying the tactical display that showed her fleet. The ships had names like HSS Vengeance, HSS Reckoning, and HSS Thunder, each one representing humanity's determination to defend itself against any threat. Unlike the Defiance, these were purpose-built warships designed for combat against any enemy humanity might face. Any word from Commander Stone's reconnaissance mission? Cole asked. Yes, Admiral. The Shadow returned this morning with intelligence on Imperial military preparations. They're mobilizing everything they have. Cole turned to Dr. Maria Santos, Earth's chief diplomatic officer, who had joined the fleet in hopes of finding a peaceful solution. Doctor, any chance we can avoid this war? Dr. Santos shook her head sadly. I've been studying the Imperial communications that Commander Stone intercepted. Their entire society is built around the idea that they are the supreme power in the galaxy. The fact that we can defeat them challenges their basic beliefs about reality. So they can't accept that we might be equals? Worse than that, Admiral, they can't accept that we might be superior. To them, admitting that humans have better weapons would be like admitting that their entire civilization is a lie? Admiral, Cole sighed, then we fight. Back on the Imperial capital, the council meeting was growing more heated. Representative after representative stood to voice their concerns about the human threat. Your Imperial Majesty, said Representative Knoxville of the Science Worlds, perhaps we should attempt diplomatic contact with these humans. Surely a peaceful solution is possible. Emperor Valdris shook his head. The humans have already demonstrated their hostile intentions by attacking Imperial forces. With respect, Your Imperial Majesty, Representative Knoxville persisted, our records show that Admiral Zextar demanded their surrender and opened fire first. The humans may have been acting in self-defense. An angry rumble went through the chamber. Representative Greater of the military world stood up, his massive frame towering over the other delegates. Are you suggesting that the Empire was wrong to demand submission from an unknown species entering our territory? I am suggesting that perhaps the humans did not understand our customs, Representative Knoxville replied. First contact situations can be complicated. Supreme Admiral Korath stepped forward. Representatives, the nature of the initial contact is irrelevant. What matters is that the humans have demonstrated the ability to defeat our military forces. This makes them a threat to Imperial security. But what if they only want to be left alone? Representative Knoxville asked. What if they have no interest in conquering Imperial territory? It does not matter what they want, Emperor Valdris declared. Their mere existence proves that our military supremacy is not absolute. Other species will see this and begin to question Imperial authority. Rebellions will spread across the galaxy. The Emperor was right, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Reports were already coming in from various sectors of the galaxy. Species that had been loyal Imperial subjects for centuries were suddenly asking questions about human weapons and human technology. Some were even requesting information about how to contact humanity. Representative Calcith of the Outer Colonies raised a tentacle. Your Imperial Majesty, what if we simply avoid human space? The galaxy is large enough for both our civilizations. Impossible, General Vexhai interjected. Our computer models show that knowledge of human capabilities will spread throughout the galaxy within a few years. Once other species learn that the Empire can be defeated, our authority will collapse. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Empire was not just facing a military threat, they were facing an existential crisis. Their entire system of government depended on the belief that Imperial technology and Imperial military might were supreme. Emperor Valdris rose from his throne. The decision is made. The human species represents a threat to the stability of the galaxy. They must be eliminated completely so that their dangerous ideas cannot spread to other worlds. Representative Knoxville stood up one last time. Your Imperial Majesty, I must protest. Genocide is not the answer to this problem. It is not genocide, the Emperor replied coldly. It is pest control. The humans are a disease that threatens the health of galactic civilization. Like any disease, they must be eradicated completely. As the council meeting ended, orders went out across the galaxy. Every Imperial ship, every Imperial soldier, every Imperial weapon was to be used in the coming campaign against humanity. The Empire would use all of its 3,000 years of accumulated military power to crush the human threat once and for all. But as the representatives filed out of the council chamber, many of them were thinking about what they had learned. The Empire's weapons could not stop human projectiles. The Empire's shields could not protect against human attacks. If the mighty Empire was vulnerable, what did that say about the nature of power itself? On dozens of worlds, species that had served the Empire faithfully for centuries began to have dangerous thoughts. They began to wonder what would happen if they simply said no to Imperial demands. They began to ask themselves why they had accepted Imperial rule for so long. The Emperor had ordered the destruction of humanity to prevent the spread of dangerous ideas. But it was already too late. The idea that the Empire could be defeated was spreading faster than any military force could stop it. Admiral Cole received the final intelligence reports as her fleet prepared to depart for the battle zone. The Empire was sending everything they had, 10,000 ships, millions of soldiers, weapons that could destroy planets. Admiral, Dr. Santos said quietly, are you sure we can win against such overwhelming numbers? Admiral Cole looked at the tactical display showing her small fleet of 47 ships. Against 10,000 Imperial vessels, the odds seemed impossible. Admiral Patricia Cole stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, watching the massive Imperial fleet drop out of faster than light travel in the Centauri corridor. The sight was overwhelming. 10,000 alien warships arranged in perfect formation, stretching across space like a metal constellation. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral, I'm reading exactly 10,043 Imperial vessels, reported Lieutenant Commander Rachel Green from the tactical station. They're maintaining standard Imperial battle formation. Admiral Cole nodded, studying the enemy fleet on her display. The Imperial ships were arranged in neat, organized lines, just like their military manuals probably prescribed. It was an impressive sight, but it was also predictable. Captain Morrison, status report, Cole called to Jake Morrison, who now commanded the Defiance as part of the human fleet. All systems ready, Admiral? The Defiance is prepared for combat, Jake replied from his position in the fleet formation. Cole looked around at her small fleet of 47 ships. Against 10,000 Imperial vessels, the numbers seemed hopeless. But Admiral Cole had studied every piece of intelligence about Imperial tactics, and she had spotted their weakness. All ships, implement Battle Plan Delta, she commanded. Break formation and scatter. Use the asteroid field for cover. The human fleet immediately split apart, with ships heading in different directions toward the nearby asteroid field. It looked like chaos, but it was actually a carefully planned maneuver. Supreme Admiral Korath watched from the bridge of his flagship as the human ships scattered. He had expected them to form a defensive line and fight a traditional battle. Instead, they were running away and hiding behind rocks. Pathetic, he said to his officers. They realize they cannot stand against the might of the Empire, so they flee like cowards. Supreme Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the human ships are using the asteroids to break up our formation. Our ships cannot maintain proper lines in that debris field. Korath waved a dismissive hand. Then we follow them in and crush them. Signal all ships to pursue and destroy. As the Imperial fleet moved into the asteroid field, Admiral Cole smiled. The Empire was doing exactly what she had hoped they would do. Their rigid formations were useless among the floating rocks, and their commanders didn't know how to adapt. Rachel, take your fighter squadron and begin hit-and-run attacks on their flanking ships, Cole ordered. Yes, Admiral. Launching now. Commander. Rachel Green led a squadron of small human fighters into the asteroid field. The tiny ships were invisible to Imperial sensors, designed to be too small and fast for the Empire's weapons to track effectively. The first Imperial ships to enter the asteroid field found themselves under attack from multiple directions. Human fighters darted between the rocks, firing their weapons and disappearing before the Imperial gunners could respond. It was like trying to swat flies with a hammer. "Supreme Admiral," came a panicked voice over the communications system. "Our forward ships are under attack by unknown small craft. We cannot track them with our sensors." Korath felt his confidence beginning to fade. "How many of these small ships are there?" "We cannot tell, Supreme Admiral. They appear and disappear too quickly for our systems to count." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Morrison watched the Imperial fleet struggling to deal with the human fighters. "Ben, target their command ship. One shot to disable their communications array." "Targeting now, Captain," replied Ben Torres from the weapons station. Firing. The railgun round crossed space in seconds, punching through the Imperial flagship's shields and destroying its main communications array. Suddenly, Supreme Admiral Korath found himself unable to coordinate his massive fleet. "Communications are down," his officer reported. "We cannot contact the other ships." Korath stared at his displays in disbelief. How could a single shot disable his ship's communications? "Switch to backup systems." "We are trying, Supreme Admiral, but the human projectile damaged multiple systems. It will take time to repair." Across the asteroid field, other Imperial ships found themselves isolated and confused. Without clear communication from their flagship, the rigid Imperial command structure began to fall apart. Admiral Cole seized the opportunity. "All ships, focus fire on the Imperial command vessels. Disable their ability to coordinate their fleet." The human ships began systematically targeting the Imperial command structure. One by one, the enemy fleet's leadership ships found their communications destroyed, their sensors damaged, their ability to command their forces eliminated. Dr. Helen Wright, monitoring the battle from her science station on the Defiance, shook her head in amazement. "Captain, their entire fleet is designed around centralized command. When we cut off their communications, they don't know how to operate independently." Jake nodded. "That's their weakness, Helen. They've never had to think for themselves." Supreme Admiral Korath watched helplessly as his carefully organized fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships were firing in all directions, trying to hit human vessels that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Some Imperial ships were accidentally firing on each other in the confusion. "Supreme Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "we are receiving reports of massive damage throughout the fleet. The humans are using some kind of advanced stealth technology." "Stealth technology?" Korath demanded. "Explain." "Their ships seem to be able to hide behind objects much smaller than themselves. Our sensors show them in one location, then they appear somewhere completely different. It is as if they can teleport." Korath felt a chill. The humans weren't teleporting. They were simply using the asteroids for cover and moving faster than Imperial sensors could track. But to his rigid military mind, it seemed impossible. Admiral Cole coordinated the human attack from her flagship, watching as her small fleet systematically dismantled the massive Imperial armada. The key was never fighting the enemy on their terms, never standing still long enough for their superior numbers to matter. "Admiral," reported Captain Morrison, "Imperial ships are beginning to retreat from the asteroid field. They're trying to regroup in open space." "Good," Cole replied. "Rachel, take your fighters and harass their retreat. Don't let them form up again." The human fighters swarmed around the retreating Imperial ships like angry wasps, striking at their engines and weapon systems. Every time the Imperial ships tried to form a defensive line, the fighters would attack from a different angle, forcing them to break formation again. On his flagship, Supreme Admiral Korath finally admitted what he didn't want to believe. "Signal all ships. General retreat to minimum safe distance." "Supreme Admiral," his communications officer said, "many ships are not responding. We estimate 40% of the fleet has suffered critical damage." Korath stared at the tactical display. His fleet of 10,000 ships had been reduced. to a confused, scattered mess by fewer than 50 human vessels. It should have been impossible, but the evidence was right in front of him. Emperor Valdris the Eternal watched the battle reports coming in from the Centauri corridor with growing horror. The Grand Armada, the pride of the Empire, was being destroyed by a handful of human ships. How is this possible? He demanded of his advisors. Your Imperial Majesty, General Vexhai replied, the humans do not fight like any species we have encountered before. They use unconventional tactics that our forces are not trained to counter. You mean they cheat? The Emperor said angrily. No, Your Imperial Majesty. They simply think differently than we do. They see opportunities where we see chaos. As the battle continued, reports began coming in from across the galaxy. Species that had been subject to Imperial rule for centuries were watching the battle recordings and asking dangerous questions. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the local population gathered around communication screens to watch the impossible sight of Imperial ships retreating from human forces. On the agricultural world of New Harvest, farmers stopped their work to see the mighty Empire's fleet scattered like leaves in a storm. If the humans can defeat the Empire, whispered a Zephyrian dockworker, maybe we can too. Similar conversations were happening on hundreds of worlds. The idea that the Empire could be resisted was spreading faster than any Imperial fleet could travel. Back in the Centauri corridor, Admiral Cole received a priority communication from the Imperial flagship. Supreme Admiral Korath appeared on her screen, looking defeated and exhausted. Human Admiral, he said, I request a ceasefire to discuss terms. Admiral Cole studied the alien commander. I'm listening, Supreme Admiral. The Empire acknowledges that your forces have superior tactical capabilities. We are prepared to discuss coexistence, Cole nodded. The first term is simple, Supreme Admiral. Humanity wants to be left alone. No Imperial ships in human space, no demands for tribute or submission. Agreed, Cora said quickly. But you must understand, other species will see your victory here. They may begin to challenge Imperial authority. That's not humanity's problem, Cole replied. That's yours. After the communication ended, Cole turned to Dr. Santos. Doctor, what do you think will happen next? Dr. Santos looked at the scattered Imperial fleet on the tactical display. Admiral, I think the galaxy is about to change in ways none of us can predict.